Hi everyone, Sabrina here from Scrappy Tales Crafts, and today I'm going to show you 5 cards that I made with the March 2020 Hero Arts card kit. I'm going to show you what came in the kit. You get 5 mini ink cubes, 2 green, 2 pink, and 1 blue. You get some pink puff embossing powder, and then 6 sheets of colored cardstock in pink, blue, and green. You get 2 of each color. And then you obviously get your stamp set. This is a stamp layering set. You can create some really pretty spring scenes and some cherry blossom trees, and that's why you get 2 pink inks from the kit. And then you get your coordinating dies from most of the images from the stamp set. So I'm going to ink up my images first, and that's what I typically do when I'm making my 10 card or 5 card one kit videos. I always stamp and then I color. So this is a stamp layering set, so I'm just going to be layering up these stamps with the colored inks that came in the kit. I'm also going to pull in some Memento Dewdrop inks, and that's just because I didn't want all my cards to look the same. When you're limited to only 5 inks, sometimes the cards can start looking really similar, so I wanted to have a few with some different colors, but I will showcase the 5 inks that came in the kit because they were really pretty. I'm also going to pull in some other Hero Arts inks that came in past kits just to try to stick with the Hero Arts theme, but I don't have that many, so I have more Memento inks that, again, I'll pull in just for some different colors. Now, you're seeing me ink up the grasses in several different colors. You can see that brown grass looks really ugly, but I wanted that one to be dirt, so you're going to see what I do with that later. For most of my grasses, I stuck to the 2 shades of green inks that came in the kit. You can see this lighter grass I'm working on. I stamped the first layer with New Sprout Memento ink, and then the second layer with the lighter of the 2 green inks that came in the kit. I just wanted some different shades of green on my cards. Again, I didn't want them all to look the same. So I knew one of my cards was going to be fall themed, so I'm going to ink up the second layer. For some reason I started with the second layer here. I inked it up with Ladybug, Tangelo, and Potter's Clay. And then for the first layer, I'm going to ink it up with Dandelion ink, and then just around the edges, I'm going to add Potter's Clay. And I wanted this to look like a field of leaves as opposed to grasses, and I think that looks pretty good. So I'm finished with the grasses. I'm going to stamp out my ponds. I decided to make them all blue using the blue ink that came in the kit. And then for the second layer, I'm using unicorn white ink to create the ripples in the pond. And then once those ponds are stamped out, I'm going to stamp the little statues, the lanterns, which are really cute. I loved the addition of those. They filled the scene really nicely. So the first layer of the lanterns and also the rocks, I stamped those out with gray flannel, and then the second layer I used Espresso by Memento, which is a brown, but it has gray in it, so it matches really nicely. So I will say, before I started all these cards, I pre-planned them. And that's because I don't really work with stamp layering sets all that often, and sometimes I can create some really pretty cards with images like this, and then other times I don't like the turnout of them. So I thought I was going to go ahead and pre-plan, and for the most part it was successful. I was happy that I knew exactly how many images I needed and how much I needed to stamp, and I was happy that I had a color scheme for each of my cards so that they all didn't look exactly the same. Like I said, I think 3 of the cards are going to have the pink cherry blossoms, but the other 2 cards kind of are completely different in terms of color scheme. So I thought that pre-planning would just be easier for me. And it was, for the most part. I'm happy with all 5 cards. The first 4 cards turned out exactly how I wanted them to turn out, and then the 5th card kind of went downhill. But what card doesn't in a 10 card one kit video, even a 5 card one kit video? So you can see I'm inking up the cherry blossom tree in different inks. So I did quite a few in the pink. I'm going to do one in green, And then I also did a few in gray. So I did one with straight up gray flannel, and then I did another one with the second generation of gray flannel to create a really light gray tree. And I think there are white cherry blossom trees, so I wanted to combine the pink and the white cherry blossoms together for one of my cards. And then you can see I also stamped out an orangish tree, and that's because I wanted it to look like a fall tree. And I am inking up the second layer of this fall tree the exact same way I did with the second layer of the grasses, using different colors of fall ink and stamping that second layer down. So for my gray tree, I'm going to add white embossing powder for the second layer. And then for my pink trees, I'm going to ink up a few of the second layer with Versamark ink so that I can use the pink puff embossing powder that came in the kit. So I'll just finish up my last bit of stamping here. And then I'm going to pull my white embossing powder to create the second layer on my gray tree, and then I'll use that pink puff embossing powder for my pink trees. You can see the first layer of the tree, I used both the light pink and the dark pink. And once you heat set that pink puff embossing powder, it does slightly puff up, but I ran it through my Gemini and it kind of flattened it out, so it kind of defeated the purpose. But I still really liked that color pink from the embossing powder. So I also went ahead and white heat embossed all of the sentiments twice from the stamp set. Here you can see all my die cut images, and now I can start on card 1. So I'm going to first adhere the lighter green grass that I created towards the center of this blue panel. I cut this blue panel to a little bit bigger than 4.5 by 4.5 inches. You can see I went ahead and popped up that darker green grass, and then I'm going to also pop up this cherry blossom tree. I'm going to add foam tape to the top of it, and then I'll add regular art glitter glue to the bottom so that it's flush against that darker green grass. For my second cherry blossom, I'm going to add foam tape behind it, behind the entire thing, and then I'll pop it up over that lighter green grass. And then I wanted to use one of my white cherry blossoms, and I really like the different shades of pink in the addition of the white. I think it looks really pretty. I'm going to glue this one down completely flat with art glitter glue. You can see I trimmed off the bottom of the trunk so that I can tuck it behind that darker pink cherry blossom. I decided to add a pond off to the left with a few rocks. And then I also glued down one of those Japanese lanterns. So I wanted to pop this whole panel up onto a 5.25 inch square note card. So I'm going to do that just by adding some fun foam behind this panel. It's a blue color, so it matches the cardstock that I used. I'll just add some ATG tape to the foam, and then I'll pop that up right over my card base. And that will pretty much complete this card. I'm going to just embellish it with a few Trinity Stamps clear gem embellishments. And I add these to a few of my cards in today's video. They just add a really pretty shine, and they're clear, so they're not super distracting. So I'll just attach those with my art glitter glue, and that's going to complete my first card. I really like this one. I like the square size, and those cherry blossoms are just super pretty. And I didn't add a sentiment because honestly I didn't have any room for a sentiment, so I'm just gonna leave it blank for now. Alright, so now I'm going to create my fall card. I'm going to start this card off with some ink blending. I'm first going to add this darker green ink that came in the kit. I'm using a Trinity Stamps blender brush here. And for the most part, you can blend with the Hero Arts inks. You just have to work with them a little bit longer than you would with a Distress ink or a Distress Oxide. And same goes for the Memento inks that I'm adding in. This second ink is Tangelo, by the way. And then for my last ink at the top of this panel, I'm going to add Potter's Clay, which I love this color. It's like the perfect burnt orange color. You can see I didn't bother to ink up the bottom of this panel, and that's because I'm going to be gluing my grasses down there. So typically when I ink blend, I go over each color twice, so that's what I'm doing here. I'll go back in with that green. And I'm pretty happy with that ink blend. It's definitely not an ink blend I've ever tried before, but I like that addition of the green because I'm going to be adding a green tree. So I just wanted there to be a little bit more green on the panel. So here you can see what I'm doing with that brown grass that you probably were cringing at the beginning of this video, but I like it. It kind of looks like dirt or mountains in the distance. So I'm going to assemble this panel now. For the leaves, I'm going to pop those up. And then for the dirt or the mountains, I'll just add regular art glitter glue, just like I did with the first card. I liked layering the grasses together. You can see I stamped out some leaves blowing in the sky, and I stamped the orange leaves with Potter's Clay and then the green leaves with the darker green ink that came in the kit. And I love how those add a sense of motion to the card. It's really pretty. So I'm going to glue up the trunks onto the trees. I made sure to glue down the orange tree towards the top, just so that it's kind of separated from the orange grass. And then I'm going to glue the green tree more at the bottom of this panel. I'm going to pop up the green tree, and then I decided to adhere the orange tree flat. I'm going to add thank you to the top left corner, and then I'm also going to glue down a few of these Japanese lanterns. I decided to add some foam tape behind the sentiment to pop it up, and now I'll just glue down my fall tree in the back. And then I'm going to mat this panel onto some black cardstock, and then I'll adhere that to my card base. And I really love this card. I love all of them, really. This stamp set is gorgeous, and of course this kit sold out. Hero Arts has been killing it this year. They've pretty much sold out of every kit they've come out with, and I'm not a huge stamp layering fan, but I'm not going to deny that you can get some really pretty cards with stamp layering stamp sets. So we're going to start card number 3 now. I am taking a 2 1/4 inch square, which I cut from some white 110-pound Nina cardstock, and I'm going to ink this square up with the lighter, the 2 green inks that came in the kit. I'm taking a green tree that I stamped out earlier. I'll attach the trunk to it, and then I will glue the tree onto the square. I'm also going to tuck a pond behind that tree, and then I'll trim off the rest that's overhanging on this square. I'm going to stamp out a few of those leaves blowing in the wind with that same green ink, and then I'm going to ink up another 2 1/4 inch square with some Tangelo Memento ink. I am ink blending each of my colors with some Picket Fence Studio blender brushes or my Trinity Stamp blender brushes. Alright, so I'm going to take another fall tree that I made, and I'm going to glue it on the left side, and then I'll glue a little Japanese lantern beside it. I'm attaching everything with my art glitter glue. I'll flip that square around and trim off the rest. And then I'm going to take those moving leaves again, ink those up with Potter's Clay, and just stamp those around the square. And then I'm going to take another 2 1/4 inch square, and I'm going to ink this one up with the blue ink that came in the kit. Now, if you haven't guessed, what I'm doing is I'm trying to create a square for each season. I actually created the same exact card last year for another Hero Arts card kit, but since then I've gained a lot more subscribers, so I think most of you haven't seen me create this card yet, and it is slightly different since the trees I'm using are different, but I thought that these cherry blossom trees would work great to create a 4 seasons card. So for winter, I'm only going to glue down the trunks of the trees. The 2 trunks in the back are the 2nd generation of gray flannel ink, and then the middle tree is the 1st generation gray flannel ink. And then I also glued down another Japanese lantern to the side. And then instead of stamping out leaves blowing in the wind, I thought I would use this stamp as snow. So I'm inking those up with some unicorn white Hero Arts ink. I'll trim off the rest and then I can work on my spring panel. So I'm going to ink this one up with the lightest colored pink ink that came in the kit. And then I'm going to glue my cherry blossom right in the center of this square. I'll just attach my trunk to the tree and then I will add it to my square. And then I decided to add 2 little pebbles below the tree. I'm going to take that moving leaves stamp yet again, ink that up with the darker pink ink from the kit, and stamp a few of those around. Alright, so I wanted to mat each of these squares onto some black cardstock, and I'm going to double mount these squares with foam tape. The foam tape I'm using is by Uline. It comes already double mounted, which is really cool. So I'll just pop those up over my black mats that are 1/8 of an inch bigger. So I'll do that with each one. And I'm moving the panels off to the side of my desk where the white shows. It was a little bit easier for me to see the contrast of the black cardstock against the white. So here is all 4 panels side by side. I love the colors. It's just super bright once you add all of them together. So I'm going to glue each of these squares down with my art glitter glue, evenly spacing them apart. And then I'm going to adhere my sentiment right in the center. I chose Live Life in Full Bloom. So I decided not to cut down that double mounted foam tape to add in between those really skinny areas in between the squares. So I'm going to use Scotch 3M foam tape and double it up instead. I'm going to add some art glitter glue to the sides of the sentiment that overlap the squares, and that's going to complete my 3rd card. I absolutely love this one. I love square cards in general, so this one turned out really pretty. So for my 4th card, I'm going to take some gray flannel ink. I have the gray flannel in a larger ink pad, so I'll just add some ink to my blender brush and very lightly I'll add some ink to the edges of this white panel. I had to do this several times because I was super heavy-handed each time. You just want to add a little bit of gray to the edges. Alright, and then I die cut a circle from the pink cardstock that came in the kit. I'm going to add just a little bit of that darker pink ink around the edges of the circle. I'm only going to add the pink ink to the top because I know I'm going to add grass at the bottom. Alright, so I inked up a grass in gray and black ink, as you can see. I'm going to trim it in half so that I can glue each end onto the panel. There will be a gap in between, but my circle is going to cover that up. So on my pink circle, I'm going to add green grass. And then I'm going to adhere a cherry blossom tree to the right of that circle. I'm also going to adhere a pond, and I wanted the pond to halfway be on the pink circle and then halfway be on the black and white panel. So it's kind of like spotlight die cutting in a way. So I'm going to adhere my black and white pond on the grayscale background and then the blue onto the pink circle. Alright, and now I'm going to attach my cherry blossom tree. I'm also going to add a few of the Japanese statues. And then I felt like my sky it seemed off. Like there was so much stuff at the bottom of the card and it didn't look balanced. So I'm going to add my sentiment to the top left of the sky, and then I decided to add my gray and white tree to the right side. And I really love how this card turned out. So I wanted to make sure that if you do see underneath that circle, you won't just see white. So I'm going to add a little bit of gray marker between those two black and gray grasses. Added another Japanese lantern to the left, again for balance purposes. And then I'll adhere this panel onto my card base, and I love this card. When I was making it, I was a little unsure about how I felt about it, but once I placed it next to the other 5 cards that I made, this one stood out to me the most. So this one's actually my favorite. You can see I added a few Trinity Stamp clear gems on the pink circle just to add some shimmer. Alright, for my final card, I'm going to start by inking up the first layer of the grasses with my Teal Zeal Memento ink, and then I'm going to stamp a second image below that one. And then you can see I also stamped out a tree towards the bottom of the panel, and then I'm going to stamp out another one onto some scrap paper, and then I'm going to fussy cut it out because I didn't want there to be any white borders. If you haven't figured out already, I'm going to create a reflection card. So I'm going to start with the water. I'm going to ink blend some Salty Ocean Distress ink, and then Faded Jeans, and then at the top I'll add Black Soot. And then for my sky, I'm going to use the same colors. I'm not going to use Black Soot. I wanted my sky to be a little bit lighter. To mask off my grasses, I'll just use a scrap piece of paper, which I die cut from the coordinating die. I'll lay that over the grasses, and then I'll ink blend those colors again. And I didn't lay this mask directly over those grasses, so I'm going to have a little bit of a white border on top, which I wasn't a fan of. So this card was a process. Do I like the end result? Yes. Would I do it again? No. Because I really messed up on this card, and it happens. You know, the first 4 cards I made were a success, and I knew there was going to be one. I just had a feeling there was going to be one card that was going to mess up, and it was my very last card. And if it was my first, I'm not going to lie, I probably would have put this kit away for a while and then came back to it. But I don't like to start over. I made this work, and I ended up fixing it and liking it, so it just took longer than normal. So to create some reflections in the water, I'm going to add some white embossing to it, and I added the ripples with a white gel pen and some Versamark ink. And you saw me do that there while I was talking. And you can see mistake number 2, that tree wasn't completely dry, so I got white embossing powder everywhere, and I had to redo that. Alright, and here's where crap hit the fan, and unfortunately I didn't get it on camera, but I wanted to add stars to my sky, and it created huge blobs of silver watercolor paint. So I was like, oh, I'll fix that. I'll just blend the entire sky with this watercolor ink. And that looked terrible. And then I ended up smudging my grasses. So I cut the whole top half of this panel off. I liked the reflection. I was happy with that. So I just had to redo the sky, which wasn't a huge deal. It really didn't take me that much extra time. I'm just a little dramatic. And, you know, when things don't work, it's a little frustrating. But you live and you learn, and what I learned is not to create star splatters too close to your panel, or else you're going to get big blobs of paint. So you're going to see, I'm going to create some lovely stars for this sky. So I'll just re-ink the panel again with the same colors. This time I decided to add Black Soot since I had a little bit more room to work with. And now I'm going to stamp out the grasses, and I wanted it to be darker than that Teal Zeal ink I used earlier, so I'm actually going to ink up the first layer with Majestic Blue VersaFine ink, which is very dark. And any ink darker than this one is black, so my second layer is actually going to be black. You can see in the reflection the grasses disappeared, and that's because I was too heavy-handed with my ink blending. But that was okay. You know, I was glad that at least the tree was showing up, so I'll count that as a success. All right, so now I'm going to add my beautiful stars. So I'm taking, first off, a smaller paintbrush and I'm going to whack it on my Wink of Stella pen to create some itty bitty stars that I'm happy with. And I flicked from a much further distance, so there weren't big globs of paint. And the white paint I'm using is the Fine Tech Kiritaki shimmer watercolor paint. I will have it listed down below. I'm going to adhere my tree now, and then also my sentiment I decided to glue to the bottom right of this panel. I chose Thinking of You. I will add some ATG tape to this panel and attach it to my A2 card base, and that's going to complete my 5th and final card. Off camera, I went ahead and added some clear Trinity stamp gems. And now I'm going to show you all 5 cards that I created. I'll slow down the video so you can see each one up close. Let me know which card was your favorite. I really enjoyed working with the March 2020 Hero Arts kit. And I must say I've been impressed by all of their kits so far this year. I love that this one was stamp layering, and it's kind of nice to not have to color. I love coloring, but I've been coloring a lot during quarantine, so this was nice and refreshing. I love the bright colors I got with these cards, and unfortunately this card kit is sold out. I'm hoping that they'll restock the stamp set at least in the future, so we will see. If you want to see some more close-up photos and get some measurements on these cards, you can head over to my coordinating blog. If you haven't yet already, go ahead and subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell so you're notified when I post a new 10 card 1 kit video. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!